Hi everyone, this is Byron, and today I want to talk a little bit about using project-based learning as you move to a remote learning classroom. Now, changing your style from traditional teaching to project-based learning can be tough. Moving your classroom from a face-to-face space into a remote learning space can be tough too, and I'm going to be asking you to do both things at the same time. But the reality is, if you're going to have some remote learning happening next year, you're already going to be building content in an online space, so you might as well build it in a way that allows remote students to be more self-directed, more engaged, and more motivated. That's what project-based learning can do for you. Now, there are tons of resources on this HyperDoc to explain what project-based learning is. If you're still confused, go back to pblworks.org and read a few more articles, or look at the extension resources at the bottom of the HyperDoc before you watch this video. Because this video is focused on what adjustments you need to make to do project-based learning remotely. So let's dig in. First, because students have more independence when doing project-based learning, they need to have a lot of accountability. This accountability might look more like a boss checking in on their employees rather than a teacher assessing a student. In an online space, I have a few different types of accountability. First, I have a project timeline. You'll find a project planner template on the HyperDoc that will guide you in creating a PBL unit. And part 4 of that template is a calendar that you can use as a timeline for students. There are also some handy student checklist tools in the Extend section of the HyperDoc. If students are designing their own project, I'll have them submit a timeline for what they want to accomplish each day so that they're finished by the deadline. Then I review the timeline, make suggestions, and I hold them accountable to that. Now, how do I hold them accountable for their timeline? One of the ways is daily surveys. I like to have a very simple survey in which I ask the students to report on their progress. So at the end of each day, they click on the survey link, they type in their name and their email address, and then they write what concrete steps they've taken toward completing their projects. I give a small grade for them submitting the survey on time every day. And then I can tell who's on track and who is falling behind. Students not submitting a survey 2 days in a row get an automatic phone call from me to check in. Next on my accountability list, student-to-student collaboration. I put students in pairs and I have them meet 2 to 3 times a week by phone or video chat to review each other's work and provide feedback. This might take a little bit of training before they get it right. Now, I've placed a peer feedback form in the Extend section at the bottom of the HyperDoc. And I like this form because it allows the meeting to be pretty short, productive, and meaningful. So here's how it works. The student who is the project designer will give an elevator pitch of what they've completed so far, while the student reviewer takes notes. The reviewer will then ask clarifying questions and provide feedback. Then the project designer will paraphrase the feedback to make sure they understand, and together they'll decide on the next steps. And then they'll switch roles and do it all over again in the opposite role. Have them submit their next steps as an assignment so that you can be sure they're having productive sessions. This is like a 20 to 30 minute meeting for them, and it's actually kind of a shadow of the authentic audience piece of project-based learning. So it's important to do this because students tend to work a lot harder when they know they're being held accountable not just to a teacher, but to a peer every few days. The last big accountability measure is synchronous teacher-student collaboration. And you might do this in several different ways. Usually I create a virtual meeting for a small group of up to 10 students. We gather together in Zoom or in Google Meets, and I have each student share their work so far, ask questions, and receive feedback from me and from the other students. It's a great discussion event. I place a hefty grade on their participation in this virtual meeting to make sure that they show up and they know they need to present their work. And I try to keep that under 30 minutes. Students are required to attend at least one of these meetings a week, and I have them sign up for their preferred times on a spreadsheet. And since I have about 140 students between all my class periods, I expect to have about 3 meetings per day. So the learners have a lot of flexibility in their scheduling as long as they get into the spreadsheet early. I also set aside time for phone calls or for one-on-one virtual conferences for students who are falling behind based on their surveys or their peer review meetings. These calls are usually like 5 minutes at the most. And then I also have open office hours where I'm just hanging out in our video conference room and students can jump in and ask questions and get support, which is a lot easier for them to do than trying to schedule a meeting or a phone call with me if they know they can just jump in and get help. So those are my suggestions for a few of the most necessary adaptations that you'll want to make for remote project-based learning. Now, head to the HyperDoc and then get started on some project planning, and good luck on your unit.